onto Doggies and Demons.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, I
Yeah,
didn't watch this game,
interesting.
guys, so
I got
this is
to
the
watch
one game
some
over
of
the
the
weekend
second
I did
half.
not watch. So, yeah, I
Uh,
watched the other. I watched the Goldie and was it Gold Coast Sydney game at the same
Yeah,
time?
yeah,
you got
I
sucked
watched
in
the second
watching the
half of that
Wits
as well.
show.
That, yeah,
You got
the,
sucked in
Well, I had
watching the
Captain
Wits show,
Wits,
didn't
so
you?
yeah,
I had
yeah,
Captain Wits.
Yeah.
Chris. The Melbourne Doggies game, the D's just absolutely own the Dogs at the moment. Like it's just it's like mental for the what they did in the grand final or that it's just that's just one of those teams that have just got them. And like we talked about this about Melbourne wanting to run different alternatives through that midfield. Now he's obviously got himself suspended, but Cozzy Pickett, like what a game, and he still gave away 4 free kicks. Might have even been I can't remember if there was a 50 in there as well. So, but the 4 goals won, 19 possessions. Yeah, he was in everything for them. Can't even look at him as any sort of option because obviously suspension and that. But we did say that he was one that definitely will be looking at some more time, up around the ball and that because he is a game changer, Benny Boy.
Yeah, those CBAs, and then when you can hit the scoreboard going forward from those CBAs is absolutely ridiculous. And he was someone that I was pegging for a late spot on my draft sort of bench spots, but I wasn't convinced in that practice game on his impact as much or impact around the CBAs, except for that you see him kind of get in and out and around the ball. This was pretty much the ruck show for a lot of people
Mm.
outside of Pickett, who, like, geez, yeah, he's a small man, but and I guess Bailey is nothing to sniff at either, but jumping up off the ground and making head contact, like, must have had a bit of white line fever there. So this was
And he
pretty much
threw.
the
I can't
ruck
believe he
show.
didn't get done for the punch of McRae as well.
The photo looked really worse because he kind of had his fist there. But McRae was coming at him after he pretty much knocked his teammate on the ground. Then he was pretty much like holding him off a few
Yeah,
of the
but
old,
I think it's
you
the
know.
look of it as well. Like this is the hard thing because some things they go, oh, it's the look of it, and that we can't have it. Players doing that because kids, and we've got to set the example. And then other times it's like, oh well, yeah, no, but because there was not as much force on this one, we're gonna let it go. So it's hard to see, but yeah, like all the footage coming out, we clearly popped him one in the
Yeah,
face and that.
real
So
time,
yeah,
real
in
time
real
though. I
time, I
didn't
know,
have much of an
100%,
issue.
100%.
I
But
didn't have much of an
yeah,
issue.
I always think there's mixed messages with the AFL with this, and we always get frustrated with the inconsistency with it. I don't
Well,
mind;
you
I
get
can live with it not being a week. It's just the inconsistency with their decision making a lot of the time around the tribunal.
Well, not if you watch it real time, you have no real issue with it. You could take a still frame
Yeah.
of my
Oh,
everyday
of
life
course,
and find something that I've
100%,
done wrong in a still
100%.
frame. So,
Yeah,
very, very interesting.
they
The
always
ruck show
inconsistent with
was
this.
interesting though. So Max Gawn, 140 super coach. I did say Maxi Gawn, get on there. And he really did cause problems because with all the tall fleet, and they had a lot of tall fleet, the Bulldogs, they didn't know where to kick it. It was
Mm.
like, you see Max Gawn there, and then they kind of go, oh, what do we do? Oh, I don't know. Like, it was absolutely dumbfounding. And the other thing to note with Max Gawn as far as Supercoach relevance is the fact, Chris, I don't know what his CBA split as far as I think someone tweeted out, maybe
I've got it.
Fantasy Freako spoke about, his forward sort of split. Now, it wasn't at a 35% that we would be hoping. So maybe we hope that Grundy might get more ruck time at some point. But when you kind of put all those maths together, I'm like, okay, well, obviously there's something quite missing. And Gorn might have been starting back for some CBAs and then had a major chunk in the ruck, but then was forward for part of it. Because either way, it looks like he might not get CBAs unless they do share it around a little bit more, like the D's have spoken about. So we need some luck.
Yeah, so it was a bit strange to be completely honest. So in regards to the CBAs, Gorn had 45%, whereas Grundy had 55%. So he was actually slightly preferred as the CBA ruckman. However,
Hang on,
in
you got
regard,
that the other way around?
no, that's right. No, Gorn had
So Gorn had
45%.
45. Oh, okay, right.
45, yep. And
Okay,
Grundy
sorry.
had 55. However, the actual ruck contests around the ground were completely different. So now I've actually got this up here in front of me. Here we go. And so Gorn actually had 48% of total ruck contests, which is obviously slightly different. Grundy actually had 37%. So you're like, oh, well, where's that other percentage going? And so Tom McDonald actually had 14. Um, and so no, total ruck contests. So it's 48 to Gorn, 37 to Grundy, at 14 to McDonald, and 1 to Ben Brown. So They made up a little bit of a percentage there, and so that's what they do. Obviously, Melbourne is that if it's a stoppage in the forward 50, Tom McDonald or Ben Brown would take it, and that allows Grundy or Max Gawn to sit behind the ball and to act as that essentially intercepting player behind the ball, which they've had a lot of success with. I'm surprised that they didn't change that. Like they weren't like, no, it's either going to be I want Grundy or Gawn as a forward ruck. And I mean, if I'm playing them both on the field, like why aren't I getting the advantage of having both of them on the field? Which doesn't make sense to me. But they still wanted to go with that, so whatever.
The other thing to note is with the switch and variance between them, and the only way we're going to get more data is by watching more of their games, which is why it's intriguing to me. So Gorn had 87% time on ground, which I think is absolutely sensational because he can go forward and plays rucks. I think he was their preferred on. And then Grundy played 69%. He also went at 52% disposal efficiency, so it wasn't that great, right? And Grundy also got 4 frees, 4-0 against. So in fact, anything, it's probably his free kicks inflated his score, but also his disposal efficiency kind of balanced that out. And 69% time on ground. So whether they are trying to be, Melbourne-esque and maybe they'll switch and Gorn might have less time in the next game to kind of keep them fresh on a week on, week off basis. It's going to be really interesting to see that, or whether they just go, hey, Gorn, you go for 5-6 weeks and do as much as you can with more, and then we'll give you we'll go in loads. So you kind of go in different loading phases where you're going a chunk of so many weeks, you back off, and then he goes for a chunk of so many weeks, and that way you kind of stay fresh in your cycle. So I'm
Yeah.
really keen to see how they kind of
Well,
mix that up.
the other consideration there is it could be a Collingwood situation where they just go, okay, we're going to evaluate it as we go. And Gawn actually, so against English, he obviously was the main ruck. Gawn won 55% of the hitouts, whereas Grundy only won 41%. So obviously that's a fairly large difference. So they could have been like, oh, he's obviously getting the one up on him, but he's not. So let's play Gawn more in the ruck this week, and then next week it'll be Grundy in the ruck more next week, and it might vary from week to week depending on where they think they can get the advantage. So, look, I think if you're a Gawn owner, you're pretty happy right now. But at the moment, if these things don't move, you're not getting him as DPP. And what we have seen with Gawn is that he can still go big and have these big scores. This is definitely not out of the norm for him. But we've also seen that when he doesn't have consistent ruck scoring, he can drop an 80, he can drop a 90, and he can do that on other weeks. So I wouldn't be jumping for the moon right now with the way it's represented with the ruck stats and the ruck figures and how they're playing each other. So just something to be aware of. Don't go out and change your team to try and get in Max Gawn. That is not a thing. Let's wait and just evaluate as we go.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Speaking of
100%.
evaluate as we go, Clayton Oliver might be coming in my team this week, boys. Is another one to evaluate as you go. Now, the key thing to note out of this one, 80% CBAs.
83%
And
even.
got 83%. So he also scored a 113, very much back-ended. He didn't start too well the first half, came home like Clary normally does, which is very much Clary-like. Still scraped together a 113, still had like 30-odd disposals. Was it 33 disposals? And I still rate him to be able to get the ball. And I think that's why he's still a very valuable pick. The other thing to note is that Viney wasn't playing. He's expected to play this week. So what it tells me is like, well, we already know they were talking about splitting. Now, Petrarca also had a lot of CBAs. So he, for me, is the first one to make way for Viney.
79%
And
for Petrarca.
yeah, so and I think that one will drop down quite a bit to kind of facilitate and to see what it is. But my theory preseason going in was when they play a top 8 side, you want your best clearance players in that mix. And I expect Clary to get a high percentage of CBAs when they're playing top opponents, right? Because that's who you want in there to win those important games, and you have to win to be top 4. And then if they play a weaker side, you're playing West Coast or something, then yeah, cool. Give him 60% CBAs, play him off the halfback, put him on the wing, and try and lighten that load a little bit of that contest to keep him fresh. That's what I'm expecting might happen. And if you play weak sides in that role, he should still get you a 110 to 115 or so anyway. Chris.
Yeah. So the interesting thing with Melbourne is that they actually ran 8 players through their CBAs, and obviously we've got Viney coming back, so the whole split could be completely thrown out the window. But obviously, as we just mentioned, Oliver and Petraka, 83 and 79. Then they had Sparrow with 52. He was actually the third. Then they had James Harms had 45%. Cozzy Pickett had 24. So he's out for 2 weeks. So 24% of that, bang, goes straight to Viney. So that's great. And then Neil Bullen had 14%. And they did give one CBA to Trent Rivers for 3%, which is basically a null and void point. But yeah, how he impacts it, I'm not sure. I was surprised that they didn't run Brayshaw through there. So that would have been the like for like replacement
Well,
that I expected.
and Salem back as well this week, apparently, too, with the whole Viney. They
Yes.
reckon 4 should make it back. So then that's interesting. So then we need to see, realistically, if you were trying to get off Laird, you'd probably wait a week. But the idea is that you could see if Brayshaw runs through there, if Viney runs through there, what that CBA looks like with a full complement, and then make some better judgments.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So I think that is an important segue. So, all these guys coming back. So we've obviously got Salem. They're all due back next week or the week after at the absolute latest. So we've got Salem, we've got Viney, and we've got
Rich?
forward Rich.
Rich.
Um,
Yep.
so we've also got 3 new players, obviously, to the club in Bailey Laurie in his debutant, Judd McVie, and Cade Chandler. So those 3 guys are the guys that are playing basically as them. Yeah, what we can say is when that comes back, do they alter the side? Chandler's the one that's probably playing really, really well, and they could potentially keep him in the side a little bit longer. But you've also got to think, okay, so let's say um, Fritsch comes back in. I think that's a direct replacement for, say, Bailey Laurie. Viney coming back in doesn't necessarily impact the forward, but then Tom Sparrow might get less CBAs. Then all these guys are pushing into that forward line. Therefore, someone's got to make way from the forward line. Who is it? I also think that there's a potential for him to be the sub. Now, the unfortunate thing is we won't find out this week because Cozzy Pickett's out for 2. We won't probably even find out for 2 weeks because I
Yep.
think that I think this could be a serious danger pick. So Chandler's one I definitely wouldn't be getting on this week, and even next week I'd be like, well, at least if this week if he pumps out a shit score, then you go, okay, don't worry, I'm not going to even bother. But if he pumps out like
Yeah.
an 80 again, then you're like, fuck, do I get on him
It's
and
tough
with it?
then, hey. You get
Yeah,
him, you get one price rise. Next minute, it's like, oh, wonderful. Pickett's back in full complement. And now, Chandler, you are sub.
right.
And it's got it screamed all over it. And people will
It
take the
does.
risk and they'll get rewarded, or they'll take that pick and then complain a week later, like, oh my God, he's sub, and then literally
Yeah.
pumps out a 20.
And the other thing is obviously Melksham was the sub. So he's generally been in their best 22 for a long, long time. I know he's been in and out. He's had injuries, blah, blah. But he's
Yeah.
been around
No,
the
he's
mark.
done.
So, yeah, but he's also a guy that one bad game and he could come in. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that and that's the difference. So I like Chandler as a pick. And I did say this in a tweet. I do, because he plays really, really well, plays hard, knows how to find the ball, knows where the goals are. Great.
Got plenty of
I'm
friends.
just, yes, he does. Good one. Unintended. I actually don't know what he does for a job, so that's good. Anyway, so
Hey,
but
look
yeah,
at you go. That's real growth, Chris. You never, ever understand any friends' quotes and references.
thank you
He
very
never
much.
does. And then he
Thank you
just
very
got
much.
one. He
I
actually
know.
just got one. Wow.
And then you almost didn't
You
get
go.
mine back, which is I thought it was actually hurtful. But yeah, so I think that overall is my opinion is just hold, see what he does this week, see if he's named for week 3, and then make a judgment call. But be aware, I'm probably not getting him at all. I'm actually the must-have for me next week. I'm thinking is going to be Phillips. I think that that's a better risk to take. As you know, a high-end draft pick. I'm not sure why he was even sub in the first place. Shields on the wing is an interesting pick from Clarko, but maybe he's just trying to educate the team and get them to follow his system. And I don't, yeah. Anyway, I think we've probably spent too long on those guys, but I just wanted to highlight that important point.
Yeah. Speaking of other importance, Bontempelli and Cray. So Jackson McCray. So Craig McCray. Fuck. Yeah. So really interesting. I thought Bontempelli I thought was good enough. I mean, 25 disposals, similar to what he does normally. 60% disposal efficiency is probably unlike him. And if they weren't in a drumming, I think he was someone that probably could have actually pushed that floor a bit higher with some better disposal efficiency. But we did say with Bontempelli that the new CBA role he's having, his floor is now more like that 100 mark instead of the 90s that he would get previously. So he's gone up, his floor's gone up 5 to 10 points. So now we see like, hey, 107 in a loss, right? Compared to we see them in a win or something like that as well, where it's closer, for instance. I think there's definitely some real scope there. Interesting that Liberatore actually was the third highest scorer for the Dogs after I ripped into him all preseason. So interesting there. I think Craig McRae, sorry, oh my God, Jackson McRae, bloody Collingwood, Chris, your bias. Jack McRae, I think, is played less CBAs than some of the others and a bit of wing time. So he's definitely a pass at this point for me. Any thoughts on those guys before we move?
Yeah. So exactly what you're right. I was just going to highlight. So 62% CBAs for Jack McRae. He averaged 64% last year for that same average. I think it was 115. That's probably what he's going to do. And we've been hammering this drum for a little bit, but he's not the 125 player that you're after. So if that's what you picked him for, I don't think you're going to get that this year. Libba and Bont are the guys that have had the big upticks in terms of their CBA attendance. So Liberatore is up to 72% this game, and Marcus Montepelli is 69%, which is a 10% bump. So we should see that eventuate into his scoring in wins in days where he has a good day using the pill, etc., and he can score quite higher. Bailey Smith had 55% and Treloar had 41%. So he had a fantastic game, Treloar, from his stats. I'm not sure how it looked, but he must have been everywhere based on what statistically, 32 disposals, 11 kicks, 21 handballs, 5 marks, 6 tackles. Wow. He was a bit
Can we go
everywhere.
from being everywhere to being nowhere? Because Liam Jones had like 4 Supercoach points nearing halftime. Now, if he got injured and subbed off in the first 3 minutes or something or other, then yeah, that's understandable. That's to be expected. You go, okay, that's unlucky, very early in the game. But near halftime, to cop a mild blow towards your neck and then go off shrimping, right? Obviously, it's really bad. He's injured. I get it, right? I do apologize. A little bit's personal. But yeah, 5 Supercoach points, man.
Yep.
Yeah. So here's the thing. He's looks like he might play. He's been cleared of serious damage. They get the physios into it. He might play this week. Part of me is thinking, get out of my team. I can't even trust you to score 5 Supercoach points in a half a footy. And then the other part of me is going, okay, well, hang on. St Kilda have a horrible forward line.
Yeah.
And Fremantle just reamed them so hard with Supercoach points. I think there's like 3 defenders just absolutely towed them up.
Yeah.
Probably combined for like 450 Supercoach between 3 people. Like it was huge.
It was huge. So this is
Absolutely.
the hard thing right now.
Kind of get a free hit with him, right?
Yeah, you do. You do. So if he's now, I think you're thinking if he was not to, make the cut for the weekend, then that's probably the one where you go, yeah, okay, now I might do the trade. But if he's named, yeah, you do. You've got the free hit with him. Even probably more like I don't think anyone's got any of those loophole options for the defense. But let's just hypothetically say Chesser, for whatever reason, might be left out of that. Now, I don't think that happens, but him as a loophole guy will say Constable. If Cowan or I'm gathering maybe it's like Wilmot or somebody like that's playing earlier, there might be the possibility that you can take an emergency score and then just shove Jones on your bench this week anyway. And then that's the other flip side. If Jones misses and one of those bench scores goes really good for you early, he might just able to be that emergency loophole for us this week too. So yeah, we've got some options with him without needing to trade him out. The perfect world he plays, and he just does what those Freo defenders do.
Yeah, no, if he doesn't play, I'm looking at Wilmot or Cowan. Is it?
Well, you've got
loop. Yeah, to loop one of them. But the issue is that what you're having with your if Chesser's not named or whatever hypothetical, he might be sub, and you won't know that.
Well, that's right. It depends when
they play last.
Yeah, that's right.
They play last, whereas
no, but you'll know
Carlton
because
first, Lions are Friday.
But Ben, you'll know because
they'll name their side.
West Coast will name an extended squad. So if Chesser's not in that extended squad, that's a different story. Where it's like, okay, we know he's not going to be the sub. If he's in the extended squad,
he'll be in the extended squad.
Well, he should be, but
they add 4 more into it.
I can't see it changing. But I'm just saying, you never know. There's different. We just said he did not. He looked, he struggled for a bit of fitness and a few other things in that game. So yeah, you'd think they'd give him more than
Oh,
one game at it, but if the waffle's
I
starting
don't think
and that,
I
you
don't think
just
it was fitness. I think it was management.
well, management as
I think
well,
they
yeah.
kind of held. I
And
think they
we
held him
know
back.
we know Chester had the injury through the preseason. But anyway,
Right.
we'll find that out
Right.
later in the
So
week.
loophole Liam Jones if
But
you can.
Cowan or
Otherwise, trade him.
Cowan
Yep.
or Wilmot, you get that option. And if one of them
Yep.
go big and Jones doesn't play anyway, well, it's like, well, that's fine. I can hold him and take the 60, 70 or whatever if one of those score that well. If they don't, well, then
Correct.
you
If
can
he
look at
goes
swap.
big,
Yeah,
yeah. If he goes big, keep him. If not, then trade
yeah,
him.
that's right.
Gold Coast and Sydney is the last one. This was
um,
an absolute drumming as well. There's a couple of these this week.
sorry, guys.
Or doggy.
Before we move
You
on,
got a doggy.
yeah. So I read that Rory Lobb was injured. Is that true? Did
Yeah,
someone
he's
say?
out.
So he's
Ankle
going in
ankle
for ankle
surgery.
surgery. How
Mm-hmm.
much does
Yeah, they don't
how
expect
does
him
that
to
impact
lose.
Bont again? Does that mean that
English.
now we have old Bont?
No, 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 because they're already playing
No,
4 tours and they're
they
saying
had
we're
too many
probably
tools
too
anyway.
tall. But it could affect English because they might actually. Well, who's going to back up Ruck now?
Well, who they used last year? Dunkley. So is Bont now
No,
back up
they
ruck?
No, or they used Steph
Sam
Martin.
Darcy, wouldn't
So
they?
now,
Yeah,
Sweet might come in
No,
that's
wouldn't
as
they
who.
just
another
no, they've got
possible
too
option.
many
Well, they
no,
could go
they've got
sweet.
too many tools in this they've got too many tools in their side as it
Not
is.
now. They've just lost one. They used to
Yeah,
play
they
Steph
already
Martin
had
at
too many
50%.
all the media down here in Melbourne this week, I know you guys don't get it, was why is Beveridge playing so many tools? And they were just absolutely reaming him on it and that going, you've got too many tools in your side, stop being so pig-headed about it, that. And he's like, no, I'm going to keep with my structure, rah, rah, rah. But now they've actually got the option to take the tool out. And yeah, so unless he goes the
But
full Bev and goes, no, I'm not listening to the media at all and that, but it's been all the talk down here.
I don't
Yeah,
think they
I
played too
understand
many
the
tools.
too tall part.
They
I
did
don't think they
play
did.
that's all the talk down here about them playing way too many tools in their side.
No, he said it didn't work out and they're trying to get the right blend,
Well, they are
etc. It
trying to
didn't
get the
really
right
work
blend,
out.
but he said he like being Beveridge, you'll keep. But there was definitely the discussion down here, mate. More than the discussion, the media that
Yeah,
was
that's
the thing
because
that was
that's because
getting into it.
you Victorian media
Yeah,
just like to
mate. But
blow up stuff.
yeah, but you guys don't get the same, media
Yeah,
stuff
well,
that's
it's
going
quite
on. Then
peaceful up here. No wonder Luke Hodge wants to move
yeah,
up here. No wonder
yeah. Well,
bloody
of
there was
course, mate.
rumors of Lance Franklin trying
Anyway,
to move up
No,
here
I
or
think
go to Sydney.
I
Yes.
think
So
the
I
overall is keep an eye on it because that could impact
yeah,
well, good. It
who's
could
could
like
in?
if
impact
they bring it
English, could
in.
impact Bond, could impact a whole bunch of different things. So something to just keep an eye on during
Agreed.
the week.
I don't think it impacts Bond, but I think it does impact English possibly depending on who's hitting these CBAs.